Joining me now, Democratic Congressman Jake Auchincloss of Massachusetts. He's a veteran of the U.S. Marines. He's currently a major in the reserves. He also commanded infantry in Afghanistan. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you for being with us this morning. I want to ask you, first of all, as somebody who has been in a fighting force, there is now but an announcement that NATO is deploying its defense force. This is the first time in history that NATO has done that. Article 5 has been invoked one time before, after September 11th, at the request of the United States. But the actual NATO defense force has never been activated. What can you tell us about this?
This is about the president and our NATO allies making clear that the territorial integrity of NATO is sacrosanct. We are deploying the Quick Reaction Force, which I believe numbers up to about 40,000, to the eastern flank of NATO, so that Vladimir Putin understands that a single Russian soldier sets foot on NATO soil and there is going to be a military response.
Do you think there's any likelihood of that? In other words, Vladimir Putin, it does seem he wants to get real close to NATO countries. He is already on some parts of the Russian border. But do you think there are any designs that Vladimir Putin has on going beyond non-NATO countries? He's got Belarus, obviously. He wants Ukraine, but not going to go to Poland or Lithuania or Latvia. Would you agree?
I'm not going to get inside the mind of Vladimir Putin. I think it's a deranged place. What I will say is that historically, Russia has always wanted to have a footprint in Poland due to its own security concerns about ground advances on its western flank. And so NATO is right to be on guard. I do think that the chance of any incursion into NATO territory is remote. And then it's certainly more remote now that the United States and our allies followed through on our threat of unprecedented sanctions should he invade Ukraine, and that we have deployed and scaled up our footprint on the eastern flank of the alliance.
There are a couple of stages of sanctions above where we've gone right now. Some of them are specifically on the energy sector, and they've been opposed by some of our European allies because of the dependence that they've got on Russian oil and gas. Others have been about the SWIFT banking system, also opposed by people who trade with Russia, because whatever little trade you have will disappear at that point. What's your sense on whether or not we need to up the sanctions game here?
The sanctions are going to be one part of a multidimensional strategy to make this war a nightmare for Vladimir Putin. The free world is going to make it a nightmare for him in Ukraine. We're going to provide lethal and non-lethal aid to Ukrainian fighters. And as your previous guests have made clear, Ukrainian people are fighting. And Vladimir Putin is going to realize that wars may be simple to start, but they are very challenging to end. And that there's a difference between military superiority and being able to establish a political and sustainable solution. I think he's going to be bogged down in that country and start to be bled dry. But we're also going to make this a nightmare for him at home. The Russian people do not broadly, I don't think, support war, unprovoked war on fellow Slavs. And the United States and our allies need to be waging information operations directly against the Russian homeland that make clear to Russians that because of sanctions, because of Russia's isolation from the global economy, their standards of living are going to plummet, and that their leader is depriving them of the fruits of 21st century progress.
Congressman, good to talk to you. Thank you for joining us this morning. Democratic Representative Jake Auchincloss of Massachusetts. We appreciate your time.